Woo! What's going on, YouTube? It's Donnie B all day. Listen, outside, man, we got a lot of snow last night, so outside isn't happening right now. But what we're going to do is we're going to do a little knife talk. We're going to do a little blade talk, as you will, if Scab and Joe were here. We're going to talk about this guy. So this is the Gerber LHR Combat Knife, or Gulf 0183. And here's the thing. This is a combo design from 3 different people. And it says, let's see, after studying and interviewing hundreds of real-life hand-to-hand combat encounters, MACP close quarter combat expert Matt Larson. Now, I don't know if he's a close quarter hand-to-hand combat expert because of actually having to do any kind of hand-to-hand combat, which some of us actually have, or if he studies hand-to-hand life combat encounters, and that's where he gets his accreditation. I don't know anything about this guy, but it says he's a MACP close quarters combat expert, and he worked with award-winning knife makers Chris Reeve, who is really good, and William W. Harsey Jr. to create the LHR. Now, here's the deal. They call it a combat knife. And I did a video a while back, the difference between like a combat knife and a fighting knife. And sometimes you wish certain people would see it because, and I'll show you why, and I'm going to go over this entire package because some of it's really good, some of it's just okay. This style and shape blade is a fighting knife blade. That's what that is. It's a fighting knife blade. Drop point, you know, swedge, really nice for pokey. Do a pokey and you turn yourself around. But it's not so much of a combat blade. And what separates this from being a combat blade is usefulness beyond the stab or even the slash. In combat, if you guys watched any of my military pictures go by, those little videos that my girl made, and it shows a lot of my military experience through photos, you'll see that I got to do some EOD work, and we came across some IEDs in the road and had to dig them up. I was on an active Russian landmine field, and you have to have a combat tool for combat, not a fighting knife tool. I just did a design recently on a combat knife, and the combat knife has to have certain elements about it. And a lot of people say, oh, you can't have serrations on a combat knife because it gets stuck in bone and blah. Okay, first of all, you want it to get stuck in skin and bone because when you pull it out, it's creating carnal damage, unfixable damage. But beyond that, a combat knife, where it differs from a fighting knife, a tactical fighting knife, which this is, a combat knife has to be used for combat. That means you need to use it for things like the K-bar was developed for, opening your cans, opening rations, cutting your line, things like that. Will this open cans? Probably. Will it cut your line? Definitely. But it's also supposed to be your trenching tool if you don't have an E-tool, because we keep an E-tool in our MRAPs and in our Humvees and this and that. It's not very often that we're going to ruck it with an E-tool because they're a little bigger, a little bulkier, a little heavier. So what you need is something that can get it done. My other Gerber, the one that I was actually issued in combat, was more of a combat knife. It was shorter in the blade, which I have no problem with a longer blade in combat. It doesn't matter. But it was shorter in the blade, and what made it better was that it was wide. It was a nice wide all the way to the tip, not a narrow tip. A narrow tip is for stabbing and things like that. That's the purpose of this tip, right? This tip is not good for trenching. And while it shouldn't be used as a prying tool, the combat knife should be able to pry. And the reason for that is because when you come across a buried landmine and things like, you need to get under and begin to lift really soft after you've cleared everything off of it. But you're prying different things like that. When I did some EOD work, I had to use my knife for cutting cord and just some different things building the bomb. But when you're recovering bombs, the knife becomes very handy. Also, your knife should be able to dig yourself a latrine, right? Someplace to doodle. And a little skinny blade like this, it'll take you 4 days to dig a hole good enough to get yourself a latrine. You want something that's a little bit more robust so you can scoop better to get your hole dug. Also, if you have to bury line, if you're doing any kind of EOD work where you're setting up an explosive device somewhere, you need to dig out line. I would want something more robust in the tip for digging. So a trenching tool, this is not. And when you take away a combat's knife ability to do certain aspects in combat that you need it to do, it is no longer a combat knife. It's something different. What also changes this from a fighting knife to a combat knife is this here and this here. In combat, you are reaching for things quickly and haphazardly, and you're going fast, especially if you were in a hand-to-hand combat situation, or if you run out of rounds and somebody's coming at you and you know you need to get that blade out. The last thing you want to do is keep jabbing yourself on some curled back pointed guard. That is a no-no in combat situations. You need to be fast. You need to be light on your feet. You need to be ready to go. You need to be accurate, and you need to be able to safely acquire your stuff. Jabbing your hand into something pokey because you're fiddling with it, trying to get it out. Or if you are in a tight hand-to-hand combat situation and somebody is pushing back on you as you try to hit them, you don't want to get hit in the eye or the forehead with your own tool with a spot that's absolutely going to tear you up. You don't want that. You don't want this thing coming back at you and they push it on you and they rip your own skin out. They hook it in your mouth and they pull your mouth. You don't want things like that that are going to be bad. And I did a video also a while back where I told you guys, just because somebody was in the military doesn't mean they're an expert on knives. They're an expert on whatever they did. They might not even be an expert. They might suck at their job. We've had a few of those. But just because you're military doesn't mean you know squat about designing a military blade. Now, some of the features on this, the handle, there's a name for it over here. Okay, it's called tack hide handle. Provides sure grip in wet conditions. I believe that because it's kind of rubbery. What I don't really appreciate is that the grip is really small. Not so much this way, but it just has a small feel to it. You look at it and it's contoured really nicely and you'd think it'd be good. I think it's just in here and in here where it shrinks down way too much. Can I get a good grip on there? Yeah. Can I pull the grip out? Yeah, because there's not a lot here holding my hand in. It's barely a ramp. It does a sufficient job if you're doing this, but if I'm fighting and there's a pull against it, or anything that can happen where your knife is going to be, if you are wet, maybe, or cold snow, this could be going. These right here are great for separating water from the hand, trapping in body heat, things like that. But the overall grip, it's just almost there. It's so close to being there. I wish this came up a little bit more. I wish this thing wasn't here. Not at all. If you're going to have an exposed tang, have an exposed flat tang. It helps you out. You can use it for banging tent spikes if you need to. You can use it for taking the edge where it rounds off, and you can punch a hole in a can, even though that's what you're going to use this for. You can use it for all kinds of different things that you're going to need. But you're not going to hurt yourself or have the possibility of that being turned against you. This thing is like so close. It's swing and a miss in my book, but I can't wait to test it because I still want to see how good of a knife it is. This might be a really, really great knife. Anything that you put Chris Reeves' name on is usually pretty good. The other two guys, Harsey, I know I've seen Scab has a Harsey folder that he loves. I don't know. I haven't seen anything from him as a design that made me go, wow, this guy could really design a knife. I haven't seen it yet, but who knows? I've probably only seen 2 things that he's designed. So, I mean, there may be some things that he has his hands on that are really good. I don't know. Matt Larson. The name is familiar. And I'm probably sure I've seen a bunch of his stuff. I'm not sure. I don't know. It could be he might have none. This might be his first attempt. I have no idea. So I can't really speak on those guys. Chris Reeves is the only one whose pieces I know and pieces I like. So I'm trying to like, I can see this shape. I could see like it has like a Harsey feel. So I'm wondering if that was his add-on to this. I don't know if Reeves and Larson had anything into the blade, or if they tag teamed the handle, or one guy said, hey, this is what it should be for specs, and the other guys said, okay, well, this is what it should be for handle, this is what it should be. I don't know. I have no idea who designed what element of what, part of this knife. It even has their the names right there. But here's the thing. This thing might be crazy strong. This might have a great edge. It came not too sharp. The guy I traded a K-bar for this, and with one of the brothers of the blade, he reached out to me and he said, hey, I've got this, you want to make a trade? And I was like, you know what, why not? So he tried sharpening it, and it wasn't working for him. So he figured that's when he'd ask me if I wanted to trade. And I'll just put my stamp on the edge. But I'm going to try and keep the edge as close to original as possible because I think it deserves it for a test. But yeah, I don't know. It says combat knife, and I wish it said fighting knife. I really, if this thing was sold purposefully as a tactical fighting knife, I'd have been like, wow, look at this. These guys did a tactical fighting knife. And then I would have complained maybe about how the grip feels a little bit, but at least it was a fighting knife. It was a tactical fighting knife. I could believe in that. But I don't believe at all when they call this a combat knife. I just don't. You know what I mean? When you spend time in combat training, and with other spend time with anybody who knows combat. Go talk to Tim Kennedy, who's a great dude. You'll get different perspectives on different things, and what I can tell you from just experience going out with the SF doing EOD in Afghanistan, and seeing what they use as a knife, and seeing what I was issued as a knife and why I was issued that as a knife. Complete opposite of what this thing represents. But we're going to find out if it knifes next. So the next video on this knife is going to be a true blue, just let's see how it goes, man. And I have a feeling that as a regular knife, this might actually work as a survival knife. I can't see anything, and I mean anything about it that would say it couldn't be a survival knife. I mean, literally nothing. You got a nice drop point. It's a really sweet drop point right here. This angle right here is really nice. It's narrow. It's not as wide as I would like it, but it's not terrible, right? It's not terrible at all. If the edge came from this line right here, just a little bit, gave it maybe an 1/8 to a 1/4 inch more depth. Now you're talking about a totally different knife here. But I have a feeling that this is going to be a good outdoors knife. I'm already sold 100% that it's not a combat knife. It's not a combat knife. I don't care what they call it. I don't care who put their name on it. They didn't make a combat knife. They made a knife. And so next video we find out how knifey this knife is, and we're going to knife with it. So that's it for this one, man. The guy who traded, you know who you are. I appreciate the trade. This is going to be fun to play with. I'm going to sharpen it up and get it going, and we'll get it out there, and we'll see how it does. That's it. That's it for this one. I am Donnie B all day. Until next knife.